Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. Time marches on. Time to continue with covering the disaster in Europe and the semi-disaster in small bits of the United States of America and I guess Greenland as well. Many things going on. Trump, I guess, still in Europe and departing a little bit later on in the day, although with the time difference, I can't keep track. And I believe it's Board of Peace Day. I mean, yesterday was Squirrel Appreciation Day. Today is Board of Peace Day. They're both about equally important. And some dispute about who's actually on the Board of Peace. So not a very peaceful start. But just happened to notice that one this morning. I mean, the whole thing is still a bit of a joke, but I guess we have to put up with it. And the White House is doing its best to stage an event with official-looking things like people in ties, signing documents, and one of those weird backdrops where they project up their Board of Peace, Board of Peace, Board of Peace all over the place, along with a little logo that they found. And got a little echoing going on there. All right. That's Greg, of course, in the background, getting ready for today's show. And I don't know, I'm a little bit off today. I just ran to the keyboard about 5 minutes before the show started, and I hadn't done any of the physical prep work that I normally do as a matter of course beforehand, setting things out and making sure everything is in place, like that damn pencil, which I misplaced yesterday and I think put back in place and then moved again before today's show started. Anyway, yes, Board of Peace. I meant to tell you something about that. Belgium, I think maybe the first one out of the box on this one, that the White House announced is joining, did join, will join, has already joined the Board of Peace, only, of course, to be met about 5 minutes later with an official release from, the Belgian office of Belgium, whatever, saying, no, we're thinking about things. They didn't want to be too impolite, but no, the answer is we're not on it. And, that's sort of a major thing, being able, on day one, not to be able to set out for everyone what the roster is, who's in and who's out, even though it won't matter on day 2, 3, 4, or 1 million who's in and who's out. You'd think you'd get that straight, but I guess not. They're doing their best to fake up events so that we'll cover it, but too bad. We want to talk about other things instead. And let's see, why don't we get started then? Greg Dworkin is standing by. And we'll bring this is the music that we'll use today to bring him in. Another of his favorites, a cartoon theme happening this week. Fractured fairy tales. There's the fracturing, I guess.
I'm up on my toes.
So much for the toes. That all came crashing down. Good morning, Greg. How are you doing?
It happens. How are you?
60
Minutes ratings are out.
Oh,
and they're
all
down.
60 of them?
They're down as low as Trump's poll numbers. Jeremy Barr writes, we expected ratings for Sunday's episode of 60 Minutes to be lower than usual considering it was up against football. But
football.
It brought in a very low 4.9 million total viewers. They averaged 8.3 million last year. And I think it was Brian Stelter who pointed out they relabeled it as 60 Minutes Present. Which makes it a special. The reason they do that is so that Nielsen doesn't count it in the ratings.
All right, I guess.
Stelter says that networks do that now and again when they know they're going to have a low-rated show for reasons. And so, that's how we start off. Also, I have some major corrections to make for the Kagro in the Morning opening.
Okay.
Cold opening today. You referred several times to Greenland when you meant Iceland.
Yeah, well, they told me I could call it either one.
Because it's a land of ice,
yes,
says Caroline Levitt.
Sure. Right. Was that her explanation for his continued confusion?
And if you don't like what he said, then you go by what was written for him, she says.
All right.
Which is weird, but again, there were times that Joe Biden said stuff that was weird,
Sure.
and then they changed the transcript.
Yeah, I guess so.
So it was weird.
I mean, I don't know why she can't just say, oh, yeah, I mean, he meant Greenland, but...
I don't know why White Houses do this. Say what you say, and then say, I made a mistake, and then, fix it. You don't have to alter history in order to make sure that you are perceived as never having made a mistake.
Everything he does is historic, so it has to be, I guess it has to be right.
It's a historic mistake.
And historically kind of correct. People do that. They're next to one another. They were intentionally confused with one another originally in order to get people to go to one and not the other. It's understandable. Although, it is a little bit worrisome in that at least one Trump-affiliated person decided that the mistake should be parlayed into, actually, we really do intend to conquer Iceland as well.
Well,
which might not have been the play.
Just so people understand, like, Greenland has more ice than Iceland, which at least in summer is green, if not when the volcanoes are overflowing.
Yeah, black then.
But not ice.
Right. I mean, they're easily confused. The islands, similar region. The land is in the end there.
It's like Australia. The population's around the outside, and, the inside is kind of funky.
Yes. Right. So, totally understandable, unless, of course, they also intend to actually conquer
confuse
Iceland.
it with Australia?
Wrong side of the earth.
Yeah, well,
Generally speaking. I think it's probably comes down to the toilet spinning the other direction.
Yeah, which may or may not be actual. Who knows?
Right. I don't know, but it's a good one. We're keeping it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a known myth, and whether it's true or not doesn't matter.
I don't know. I've
mean,
never gotten to
the important thing
look.
is, what you have to do is you have to wring out a towel in outer space over Australia versus over New York and see whether, it drips differently. Maybe it drips in the other direction. You never know. I
could believe it. Yeah, I suppose it probably has more with how you build the toilet than anything else, but okay.
So, winter storm. Winter storm is coming to you.
Thank you. I'll have one. Yes. Most likely. I think every
somebody
area.
who lives in Northern Virginia who said, this is ridiculous. People are freaking out for 1.5 feet the same way they freak out for 2 inches. I mean, you go to the store and there's no toilet paper. How does that stop snow?
That's a good question. That one I've never addressed. Although
we address in Connecticut all the time.
Yeah.
How does buying toilet paper, milk, and eggs stop snow? And if it doesn't, then why are people doing it?
I'm not sure. Toilet paper has not typically been on the list, at least that I have noticed, but I'm sure it's the case. I have noticed the milk.
Well, it depends how long you expect the storm to be.
Yeah, milk, eggs, and
bread.
You
can live without milk for 2 days, but toilet paper for a week?
That's true. Tough. That's problematic. We've never had a debilitating storm. I don't think there's ever been a storm in Northern Virginia that's like closed stores for more than possibly 2 days. So
the problem is.
I mean, I don't want to be with day one without toilet paper, I suppose. But
again, I'm up in Connecticut, but the Capital Weather Gang is writing. The problem may be, a foot of snow followed by sleet and ice, and it's the sleet and ice that get you.
I guess so. We don't get that many very large storms. We also, outside of major storms, the rule of thumb here usually is when they predict snow, I divide it by 3, and we get that. They love to say we're getting. When they say 6 inches, it's 2 inches. When they start saying it's a foot, it tends to be a foot.
Yeah. Anyway, other things that are interesting that's happening. A New York state judge, ruled that the GOP-held district, which encompasses Staten Island, Richmond County.
Another island. Oh, we're conquering that one too.
But not the middle, just the edges.
Yeah.
New York judge rules GOP-held district is unconstitutional, ordering a new map.
The district is unconstitutional. Huh.
The way the district was drawn was unconstitutional. They agreed to a Democratic argument that the problem with Staten Island is that it included parts of lower Brooklyn, or you might call lower left Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, and places like that.
Okay.
And
is that unconstitutional? I don't like that place either.
I mean, it's always unconstitutional to include Bensonhurst in anything.
Yeah, okay.
So they wanted,
I don't know, sounds fine.
the new district,
Yeah.
to include parts of Lower Manhattan. So it was Staten Island and Lower Manhattan, which would make it a lot more liberal.
Yeah.
A lot more blue.
Oh.
I mean, you're talking West Village down. Williamsburg may or may not be included, unclear, in the new
take a look on the map.
CD10. Now, why is all of this relevant? Because first of all, it would be Nicholas Maliotakis' seat, and Daniel Goldman could run against her. Max Rose could run against her. Hakeem Jeffries favors Daniel Goldman moving from Brooklyn to this CD11 and running against Maliotakis.
Oh, that's
and he may or may not win. It would be more democratic, but they don't especially like him on Staten Island.
I see.
And then CD10, which would now encompass all of western Brooklyn, along the river from Carroll Gardens all the way down to Bensonhurst and Bath Beach and Coney Island almost. That district would be Brad Landers, who was the Jewish supporting assistant to the mayor for Mamdani Valley. And he was going to run against Dan Goldman in the old district in that area in a primary and beat him. So this is a way for Goldman to keep his seat by moving to a different district. Now, whether that happens, in other words, whether it makes it through the appeal court and whether or not it gets done in time for November is all unclear. And again, as I said, it's possible that if Goldman takes this run instead of Max Rose, he'll lose. I mean, Goldman is a fine, solid, slightly left of centrist Democrat.
Yes.
Brad Lander is more to the left of that and more popular in this district and represents the future rather than the past and all of that. A lot of it is
future, past,
tied up in support for Israel. A lot of it is tied up in Staten Island not liking him because Goldman was part of the impeachment process for Trump.
Right. Although I like him.
All politics is local.
Yeah, and Staten Island is really local. Interesting. So it's looking at what they, what they might throw in there. That'd be an awkward thing, I guess. Lower Manhattan. I'm looking at the layout of the islands. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Staten Island never made any sense at all.
It's just to the north of Staten Island. Staten Island is, in fact, an island. It doesn't really make a difference.
Right.
The only difference it makes is that there's no direct bridge from Lower Manhattan to Staten Island where there is to Brooklyn, the Verrazano. But that doesn't make any difference, really.
No. I mean,
certainly not the congressional people.
No, certainly not. No, you can have.
I mean, they never visit the district anyway, so who cares where Staten Island is?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, yuck. I don't know. Staten Island is a weird anomaly. I'm not even certain why it's New York. I guess it's fine. You can have it, but it's really neatly tucked into what is New Jersey. And I guess probably much of New York actually wishes they would just admit
This NBC News article describing it notes that the order doesn't lay out a plan for what happens if the State Redistricting Commission deadlocks, as it has in the past, and it's unclear how quickly the appeals will move through the state courts, said Jeffrey Weiss, W-I-C-E, rhymes with Weiss, a professor at New York Law School and expert on redistricting in the state. And, of course, this comes across the broader redistricting battle, and up until the Voting Rights Act decision, which may come any day now, the Democrats are winning the battle that Trump started, but the war isn't over yet.
Okay. Well,
just so people, keep this in mind. Next thing on the agenda here is a new CNN New York Times poll. Why important? A prominent poll.
Why important?
A very good poll, a prominent voice that broadcasts it. Media heads everywhere look at it, so it's already being talked about this morning. Few voters say Trump's second term has made the country better. Poll finds a majority of voters said Mr. Trump had focused on the wrong priorities and that they disapproved of his handling of top issues, but the president still enjoys strong support from Republicans. In fact, when you look at it by ethnic group and demographic, the way that Nate Cohen does, The only people that are okay with Trump, they don't like him as much as they used to, but only by a smidge, are old white voters.
Old white. Okay.
Everybody else is soured. I mean, this is a separate companion article.
Like milk.
The voters
Old
who
white
have taken a U-turn
milk.
on Trump, 1 year later, the second Trump coalition has come apart.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. The major demographic shifts have snapped back. In today's poll, Mr. Trump's approval rating by demographic groups looks almost exactly as it did when he lost in 2020. If anything, young and non-white voters are even likelier to disapprove of Mr. Trump than they were then, while he retains most of his support among older and white voters. Similarly, Democrats have regained their usual advantage among young non-white and low turnout voters. Overall, Democrats lead by 5 points among registered voters nationwide, a tally that would easily be enough for the party to take back the House. It's the largest lead for the Democrats in a Time Siena national poll since 2020, and similar to Joe Biden's 4.5 popular vote victory that year. One exception, self-identified Democrats had outnumbered Republicans for decades. Before Republicans edge ahead in 2024, they continue to lead by 3 points in today's poll. Of course, there's a lot of independents. But it's a lingering reminder that something like a political realignment did happen during the Biden years. And then he goes on to make the case is basically what happened is it's not so much people like Trump, it's that they really, really, really didn't like Biden. Why has Mr. Trump lost so much ground? In one sense, there's no shortage of explanations. They don't like his performance on every issue, including immigration and the economy and his approach to Russia. This poll was recent enough to be relevant, but not recent enough to capture Greenland.
Okay, right.
The poll didn't capture Greenland any more than Trump did. In other words,
and nobody can capture this thing. All right.
Exactly.
True.
Well, I saw a wonderful
Proud
video
and
showing the
independent.
walruses and
Sort
the
of.
bears have, but that's another story.
Yeah.
I'll send that to you.
Oh.
Even
The
over just
bears.
the last few weeks, another round of new issues could have hurt Trump's standing, like Venezuela, Greenland, or the fatal shooting of a woman by ICE. None of that is in the poll, and they still hate him. Still, there's more evidence that the economy is driving voters away more than anything else. And question after question, voters give him negative marks in his handling of that issue, including 34% who approve of his handling of the cost of living compared to 64% who don't. This is his second worst result in the poll, trailing only his handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files, where I think he's like minus 44. And interestingly, there was a CNN poll the other day that the only thing that polls worse than Trump's handling of the Epstein files is using force to take Greenland. I mean Iceland, I mean Greenland. If he does that, then he'll be impeached. Because even Republican voters don't do that. That's why I think he won't do it. I think some Republicans told him, don't do this, boss, because
there was a bit of a Taco Wednesday off schedule yesterday, and we were trying to figure out, in the morning he was saying words that the U.S. papers were willing to interpret as Trump rules out the use of force for taking Greenland. Then others, sharper eyes were saying, not really. He's saying those words, but then he's saying, but you might force us to use force. I'm not saying you will, but you might.
Look, it all makes sense if you understand that Trump's a mob boss and what he's doing is foreign policy by extortion. And once you understand and accept that, internalize it, everything else he does makes sense.
Yes. Well, everybody understood it that way, so that by late morning, the correct interpretation seemed to be, well, he's not really ruling out the use of force. Then, by the end of the day, I guess he had to sit down with Europeans after that, and guess what happened? In the end, he basically said, I think he came away saying, I think we have a deal on Greenland, and the deal is we're not going to take it.
Of a deal.
Yeah, we're not going to take
it,
and we're not going to take it by force, and we might put some more bases there, which we were already allowed to do. Victory. And that's it. And so now it's kind of off the table, I think.
Yeah, well, Justin Walters noted, you got to credit the president for his extraordinary efficiency. How many past presidents have managed to start and end a trade war in 4 days?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, right. Well, that was the element that he had to, he was going to impose giant tariffs on anyone European that got in the way of his conquering Greenland. And they said, all right, in addition to you can have the bases, how about if we allow you to remove the threatened tariffs. Oh, terrific.
Right. Well, what Donald Trump said on Truth Social is, quote, based upon a very productive meeting that I have had with Secretary General of NATO Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and the entire Arctic region, yada, yada, yada. Justice says, based on a very negative reaction from the stock market, I have formed the framework of a future deal in my mind because I need a quick off-ramp.
Basically it. And I think also somehow part of the deal was that the Europeans were supposed to say that, no, we didn't. You know what? We had a big meeting. Greenland didn't even come up. He's not even interested in Greenland anymore. He's been very accommodating on that. And as long as they say so, I guess Mark Rutte had to put out a thing that said, we didn't even talk about Greenland. It didn't even come up. You know, sure, Jan. that's absolutely what happened. Well,
right.
Anyway,
back to
fine, fantastic.
Right. Back to Nate Cohn. He points out that all the other issues, the new ones like ISIS conduct, Trump's threats against Greenland, contribute to the president's political problems just as immigration or the backlash against woke contributed to Biden. Half of today's defectors from Mr. Trump cited something other than the economy as the most important problem. Democracy, polarization, Mr. Trump himself.
It's democracy, stupid.
This is an electorally decisive sliver of voters who backed him in the last election, but on balance, the poll suggests Mr. Trump is held back mostly by political gravity rather than by his extraordinary conduct. In other words, people care about their pocketbooks. He sucks, and so they're noticing and they don't like him.
Okay. Whatever it takes, although if the hatred ran deeper, that would be fine with me.
So, do you think the country is generally better off than it was a year ago, about the same, or worse? All respondents better off 32, worse 49. Democrats, that's 3 and 86. Independents is 24 and 52. Republicans, 73 and 11. So if you've lost 11% of Republicans, that's bad. Yeah, there's a sliver of those who will vote for him despite the fact that he's making life worse for me. But there's also a sliver of Republicans who will vote for somebody else, even though he's making life better.
Yeah,
you know, so it all works out in the end.
If it's only possible to get a
clear,
sliver,
and I don't understand why commentators just don't say this. Trump governs only for Republicans.
Yes.
And what about MAGA Republicans? They're essentially half the party. There's poll after poll after poll. MAGA, as a percentage of Republicans, consistently comes up as 50, 51, 52%, somewhere in that range. So Republicans are, 28% of the country or something like that. And Democrats are maybe 28 and 29. Everybody else is an independent. And so Trump is governing for the 50% of the 28%, which is why everybody else gets pissed off.
Yeah, well,
that is not a formula for winning elections, and that's one of the reasons why the Democrats are clearly favored, with or without CD 11 in New York, to take back the House.
Yeah, and it's why a lot of people panic about, well, what if he decides that the proper response to this being no way to win an election is to not have the elections? Yeah, I mean, I'd worry about that too. But in the meantime, they are scheduled to go on, and we probably ought to prepare for them.
Not just scheduled to go on, but Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, says Trump is going to spend the next almost year, from now until November,
in prison,
campaigning on behalf of Republicans, which is why he is going to Iowa, not because he's going to run to a third term. People who go to, everybody understands that if you don't live in Iowa, the only reason to go to Iowa is you're running for something.
Yes, or that mysterious baseball diamond.
Or the state fair.
Right. Oh, true. There is the butter cow.
Because you want to see the butter cow. You want to ride something on a stick.
Yeah, I would do that. And really, everybody should make plans to try.
You're crazy not to do that if you happen to be in Iowa. But if you're going to Iowa in winter, you're running for something.
That's not where the fair is. Don't do that.
That's not when the fair is, absolutely. So he's going there, and everybody else is saying, hey, listen, you are going to remind high-propensity voters who hate you that you are responsible for things.
Yes.
And they're the ones that show up in midterms.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yeah. So it's a terrible strategy.
It's an awful strategy.
That's awesome. Great.
But it suggests that he thinks elections are happening.
Yes, that is true. And I know there's online fights over, yes, they're going on, no, they're not. They'll go forward. They
Nothing
won't
to fight about. They are.
Will,
act as if they are, and then we'll see what happens.
I really don't know, if you were trying to establish, an autocracy the way he is, you'd think you would be more forward about it. But I don't know. It's a popularity contest, and he loves the idea of waging those because he thinks whatever it takes to, make it look like you won it, even if you didn't, he may be prepared to do that. But he does want the contest.
For the 30 seconds before we are on break.
Yeah.
From the poll, Nate Cohen, there are some signs of softening support for Mr. Trump among Republicans when it comes to his approach to foreign affairs and addressing cost of living, but his low approval ratings within the party comes on handling of the release of files related to Jeffrey Epstein.
Who is that
Only
again?
53% of Republicans approve of his handling of that matter, which is why Democrats should continue to talk about it over and over and over. Yes, other things are happening. None of it's a distraction. Everything Trump does badly on in the minds of voters is something to highlight.
All right.
Right? And only 34% of independent voters who tend to determine who wins elections approve of the job Mr. Trump is doing.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead and campaign for people because they will support you, and people don't like what you're doing, and what a great political idea, because I understand why you're doing it. You have nothing else, and you know you're going to get impeached. But let's talk about impeachment after the break, because there's a different approach that I think people are beginning to think about.
Oh, all right. I will. I'll wait around for that. I mean, I have to.
You have no choice, really.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp $1 bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I was promised that the president was going to be impeached in segment 2, so let's get to it. The next half an hour. That's it for the Trump administration.
If I have half hour worth of stuff, I have to say, this one made me laugh. This is all part of the Nate Cohen write-up of that New York Times.
Nate Cohen, he's everywhere.
If you want to understand how come people still vote for Trump,
do I?
Don't worry about this one. The guy lives in Massachusetts, right? But here's the quote.
Oh.
I think he must be doing something right when there are so many people opposed to him, said Paul Minahane, 77, a real estate broker who lives in Dedham, Massachusetts. I mean, Donald Trump could look at me in the face and tell me to go screw myself, and I'd say thank you.
Well, could I try that?
Yeah, I think that's good, he says. I don't think he's looking to kiss everybody's ass. I think he's going to do what he thinks is the right thing. I think that's positive. You know, I love people who are assholes, is what this guy is saying. And, that's why Republicans really don't do well in Massachusetts.
There are things people say about people from Massachusetts.
They're all assholes,
Yes.
Just ask them.
Right.
That's their nickname for themselves.
Right.
And that's because of the way they drive, by the way. And because, I used to live there. The whole idea that this guy represents Trump voters is just right on the money.
I mean, sure.
It's a cult.
And again, we always ask the question, why are they covering this? And it's understandable to me, again, from the perspective of zoo visitation, right? Who are these people, essentially, right? And you
Well,
gawk.
in Massachusetts, that's exactly what it is, because
Yeah.
Republicans are not winning in Massachusetts.
So you gawk at them, and are there really people who would say things like, "He could spit in my face," and I'd say thank you? Well, this guy said it. I don't know whether he really means it, but I
No, he
guess
means
so.
it. I promise you, he means
But
it. I met guys like
for
that.
the moment, right? You say, "Wow, what an interesting specimen." Do they have any in
I
rural
don't mind
diners?
him spitting in my face, because the important thing is he'll spit in your face.
Yeah, right. Well, there's that too. I can wipe that off. He's going to smash the hell out of you. He's going to send ice to beat you up. It'll be much worse for you. I'm counting on that. And yeah,
Right.
there are such people, and I guess they go to diners, and we all gawk at them. But
Well,
it does
when
have
he spit
the
on
effect
me, he
of,
didn't have COVID, so because I'm a voter, I'm a constituent, right?
I
I
guess.
can't say anything about you.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess the ultimate effect of it, though, it is starting to bother people. Like if you're covering them with such intensity, it makes it look like there's like the majority of the country is like that, and every piece of data says no, it's a small and shrinking portion.
Exactly. That's why I'm so
Stop.
pleased they picked Massachusetts for it.
Yeah, at least there it's not going to work.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Hey,
it's
look,
annoying
Massachusetts
nonetheless.
didn't even vote for Nixon. Come on.
Right. Well, and by the way, in order to test this theory, you have to have someone else who's not Trump spit in his face and tell him to go screw himself and see whether that affects him. Right now, he might just like being spit on, but in order to test the theory, someone else
You
will
have to
do
say,
it.
when I do that, you have to say thank you, otherwise you're lying.
Right. Well, he didn't say he would thank me for doing it, but I do have to test that premise.
Another poll, just worth mentioning. This one's out of Alaska.
Hmm.
Who are they going to vote for? I don't know. Alaska. Peltola, 49. Sullivan, the incumbent, 47.
All right, that's lower than 49.
That's PPP race. Remember,
Good.
Mary Peltola's pro-fish.
Yep.
That's enough to win in Alaska.
Long
And
John
the thing
Silver is go
that
fish.
she is popular, and
She's
Sullivan
pro-fish.
is not. Sullivan's underwater by a few points. And
nice.
She's above water by a few points. She's a very popular figure. People know who she is. Alaska's a
Sure.
small enough state, so everybody knows it.
Well,
So
it's an at-large
that's
seat.
of interest. Of course, if the Democrats plan to take back the Senate, they also have to win in places like Ohio and Maine, but or maybe even Texas. But all of it's on the table.
Yeah. And always an interesting contest in those states with one congressional seat, one House seat. You're always it's like having somebody. It's like having three senators. You don't actually have them, but I mean somebody who's run with the same electorate. There's no issue of expanding and saying can they run statewide. They always run statewide.
Right.
So
I want to talk just a little bit about impeachment, and this isn't from any specific story I've seen. Just stuff
just a wish
that has gone past me that I've seen and or people I've spoken to.
So you can't prove any of this.
Exactly, but it would be irresponsible not to discuss it.
Right. Okay.
And it would be irresponsible not to speculate about it. I think what we're going to wind up seeing is that given the response the last time the Democrats tried to impeach and convict Trump, they did impeach him.
Yes.
But
twice.
they didn't convict him, just to remind people.
Democrats
In order to
did.
do that, you need either Republicans to defect or you need more Democrats. He's not going to be impeached unless you get more Democrats, so that can't happen until after November. Unless Mike Johnson screws up even more, which he may. Well,
yeah, you have to actually put that on the table. Normally you can just skip that part, but here you have to say
but it's Mike Johnson, so anything's possible. But in any case,
I thought
what
this meant
I'm
giving him
seeing
peaches. Oh, shoot.
and putting together and piecing together based on reports of things happening is that what Democrats may wind up doing is coalescing around a strategy to impeach cabinet members.
Well, it's worth doing.
So start
They're
with Kristi
terrible.
Noem over ICE.
Sure. Just
Go
as practice.
with Robert F. Kennedy about the South Carolina measles epidemic. Think about Pete Hegseth for any reason. The Department of Labor
Drunkenness.
secretary is the one who's drinking all the time, going to strip clubs, not Hegseth. There's all sorts of other stuff going on. I mean, don't get me started on Pam Bondi and the Epstein files. You might wind up impeaching. Yes, they'll be replaced with other people, but then it still has to go through the Senate. Bad for him. Just do it.
Yeah, look, it's good practice, if nothing else. There's no reason you shouldn't look at it that way. And
Right.
the lower stakes, I don't know. People get nervous about impeaching the president, but they could care less about impeaching the Secretary of Labor.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
not like
matter.
people love Kash Patel. It's
No.
not like people are absolutely enamored of Kristi Noem.
Not
and,
at all.
Corey Lewandowski.
Quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. So I'm just
and
saying,
they're doing
keep
some
an eye on
illegal
that
stuff.
because that may
Sure.
be the unfolding strategy.
Good idea, by the way. By the way, theory, Pete Hegseth is paying for what's her name, the labor secretary, to go drinking and go to strip clubs to just to make himself look better. That's what my, that's my. Who knew? By the way, did anybody ever hint that she was this kind of person? I mean, no one knows who the hell she was. Where did she come from? Who is it?
I have no
As a matter of fact,
This is
I got to
from
look it
the
up again.
Independent from the UK, the US edition. Trump's labor secretary accused of taking staff to a strip club on official trip, report says Lori Chavez de
That's
Rimer,
it.
currently under investigation by our department's inspector general, denies wrongdoing amid allegations she took staffers to a bar outside of Portland, Oregon last April.
Yeah, and what a bar. Holy
She's the
cow.
one also accused of drinking on the job.
Right. I mean, I would. Honestly,
she firmly
that
denies
job,
any allegations. It's all speculation. It's all hearsay. It's all rumors. Wow. I mean, to be the one accused of that stuff and not be Pete Hegseth, that's pretty amazing.
Right. That's why I think he may be footing the bill. She, I had to look it up. I mean, where the hell did she come from? She's a member of Congress from Oregon once, one term. For Oregon's 5th district from she won the 2022 election, and then she's out because I don't know what, bottle service, I guess, over at the Department of Labor. So whatever, I don't know. No reports that I'm aware of her drinking on the job while she was in Congress, but she was only there for 2 years, so who knows whether anybody found out about it. By the way, before then, she was the mayor of Happy Valley. And I guess we know why they were so happy now. Strip clubs and booze. So fantastic. I saw a picture of the strip club that they went to from the outside, by the way. It may be considerably more attractive inside. I don't know. But from the outside, like roadside liquor store.
Was it a strip club in a strip mall? Was it terrible?
No.
Was it
standalone.
Four Seasons, Portland, Oregon?
Oh my gosh. It was a truck stop style dive. There was nothing else around it. It was a standalone building. Looks like might have been a liquor store at one point. And it's like, there are strip clubs that I suppose if you're going on government dimes, and I don't know whether it was she's accused of using government funds to pay for it, but she was reimbursed for the trip. But, there's considerably more upscale places, I guess, that you could go, although maybe not in the area of the country she was in, but wow, it's very, you're risking it for that. That is really something. Oh, maybe they have just fabulous entertainment. Or, as sometimes you find out, good wings.
Right.
That's
Anyway,
often
Benji
the
Sarlin
excuse.
points out it's good Greenland is behind us. Now we can get back to threatening Canada.
Sure, right, terrific. It's you don't need boats.
John Ralston,
so that's
Nevada
good.
fame, calls it the art of the kneel.
The kneel.
K-N-E-E-L. That's what Trump did.
All right.
And, extortion as mob boss. And whenever you're in doubt, just do that South Park blame Canada thing, because, sure.
Right.
Why not?
Need to bring that back. And by the way, the PM of Canada, oh, damn it, what's his name? Carney. This is a huge problem for our northern neighbors. It's our problem,
I'm
not
sending
theirs.
you a funny cartoon, just because
Okay.
I think everybody needs to
apparently he gave a very pointed and searing speech, well received, of course, because the rest of the world likes now Canada and not us. And Trump, I took a poke at him in his own speech, but his Trump speech was so rambling and weird that nobody hardly noticed individual points about that. But back to pestering Canada now.
I guess so. This funny meme has it looks like President Ursula von der Leyen, who is president of the European Union, and picks up the phone and says to Donald Trump on the other end,
Yes.
"Hey, you want to hear a joke?"
Yes, of course.
And
says, I'll be Trump.
Says, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And she says, Greenland.
Yeah.
And Trump says, I don't get it. And she says, no, and you never will.
Nice. Where'd that come from?
Laughing, and she should laugh, and that's important.
Is that where's that from? Send me the link
from Twitter,
to that.
of course.
Yeah, okay.
All
well, if you find the Twitter link, send it over, and I'll send it to people so that they can all see. This is like what was that cartoon during the Iraq War run-up that was always people in the office? Those cartoon renderings, but they were always on the phone talking to one another. You remember that one? I think it was called Get Your War On or something like that. It was very popular online thing. All right, yeah. Well, anywho, very funny. I don't get it. You never will. That's good news. What else? Anything else going on? No.
Anything else going on? Not really. Daniel Dale is counting the number of times that President Trump called Greenland Iceland. It's up to 4 at least officially.
Okay.
And other than that, people are mostly paying attention to the weather.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be the focus from now through the weekend, and I guess it could make, broadcasting possibly difficult by Monday when the ice buildup has torn down phone lines and such around the country. But yeah, wide swath of lousy weather in the mix, and selling out of all of the ingredients of French toast, but also toilet paper, and all the displays of rock salt and shovels and snow brushes are out in all the supermarkets. So it's serious now. Now,
the other thing I thought I would just send you is actual memo from ICE, a secret memo from ICE.
Good.
That says it's okay to knock people's door down and go after them without a court order.
Right.
It's not. The important thing, according to this memo, is that you have to fill out Form I-205. You have to ensure that this form is properly completed.
Oh, Trump and paperwork. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, Form I-205.
That's the immigration court order that says you're allowed to go after somebody. But the idea that you can knock somebody's door down and go in is so un-American that they had to keep this memo secret. Yeah,
that's, I guess, the big story. One, the memo is wrong, and two, they said, I think they were implying that we know it's wrong, and everybody in ICE has to see it and abide by it, but you can only see it. You cannot have a copy. You have to read it in the presence of your supervisor. You're not allowed to take a picture of it, even though that's what we have in front of us right now. Somebody did it. So a whistleblower let the thing go, but obviously they knew that they were far outside the bounds of actual law, so that's why they distributed it this way. Everybody's got to see it, but you only see it once, and then word of mouth after that, which accounts for all of the video that we're getting from outside people's houses where they are asking, do you have a warrant? And they say things like either, yes, we do, and show an administrative warrant, which doesn't count, or say, we don't need one. And if it's a fight between you waving the Constitution and them waving guns, you might be able to vindicate yourself in a year or two from now. But at the moment, the
where
guns
does it
will
say
win.
that in the memo? Maybe you're misreading it. Well, let me just give you the quote.
Okay.
Helpfully put together by Aaron Reichlin-Melnick, who is a immigration lawyer.
Thank you.
Upon information and belief, says the memo, and consistent with the May 12th memo, instructors for new ICE recruits are directed to teach that Form I-205, remember the one you have to have filled out properly,
right,
allows ICE agents to arrest aliens in their home without consent to enter the residence and without judicial warrant.
Yeah, you're supposed to teach that. That's not true.
That you're supposed to teach that to the people that you're hiring in your 13-hour prep for going out and hitting people over the head with a club.
Mm-hmm. That's the highlighted sentence. By the way, you want to read the next sentence?
Our clients understand that this instruction contradicts DHS's own written materials currently used to train ICE cadets. You mean that one?
Yes, ice cadets, by the way. I didn't never know that they were calling them that. It's a little too close to ice capades for my taste, but all right.
Ice cadets and Air Jordan.
And space cadets and ice capades combined in one. But yeah, it's interesting that that's being circulated with the other sentence highlighted and not the second. I would have used the second color of highlight. Our clients understand this contradicts DHS's own written materials. Yeah. Also the, Constitution. But if you consider that to be a written materials. But
right.
Wow. I mean, this is just flat out no. This is not. Wait, we have the sound effects for that. Oh, and I believe the Supreme Court has just issued its ruling on that.
That is not how this works!
And it really should have been lower key, given that it was, the Supreme Court. By the way, there was a separate concurring opinion.
Bald asshole?
Which may just be dicta at this point, but I think that was it's important. So that's it. They know that they are in contradiction to their own training materials because their training materials were written to comport with the U.S. Constitution. But now they just say, let's not do it. And if you beat the people up or shoot them, they can't stop you. They could say, Fourth Amendment, boo-hoo-hoo. Yeah, and maybe in a couple of years, that'll be worth something. But in the meantime, don't worry about it. Go in. You don't need, papers. They do. That's the important point. And if they have the papers, you should throw them out or burn them and then arrest them. Thank you. Good training materials. Well, we had a feeling about that.
Anyway, that's my roundup for today.
Oh, all right.
Let's do it again next week.
Sure, we can. That'll be the plan Monday, and we'll see what weather does to our technology in between. Hopefully, nothing. I don't know. Sometimes it's a little shaky when the weather gets crazy. Or your generator may come into play.
It may if there's ice. I mean, that's it. The leaves are not on the trees. What is bad is heavy leaves on trees, then a coating of ice. When that happens, the branches all snap. Just telling you from experience.
Okay.
So at least a December-January ice storm is not as devastating as, let's say, a September ice storm or an October ice storm.
Right. Well, that's okay. Well, we got that going for us, which is nice.
Yeah,
and,
that's all you got going.
Well, stay warm. That'll also be a problem, but we'll see how it goes. All right. Well, we'll carry on from here. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. And right, if anything crops up, feel free, drop it in the mailbox there, and we'll see if we can't fit it in segments 3 and 4. Although we do have a couple more minutes here.
I will absolutely do that.
Certainly.
Anyway, I did want to do a housekeeping note.
Oh yeah.
For long-time listeners of the show who know that every once in a while my good girl Abby would come and interrupt us and say, I want a treat, you're not paying attention to us. Her contract has not been renewed, and she will no longer be on the show, sadly. She left this plane earlier in the week, and just wanted to acknowledge that she won't be with us anymore.
Well, yes.
It happens. It's part of life.
Oh my.
You
I'm
get
sorry,
to be my
Greg.
age, you lose people, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
But, if you hear barking, it'll be the grand dog, who we don't have at the moment, but every once in a while. She hasn't yet trained to be quiet when I'm on the show.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to a few more years of training for her then.
Well, she's a Shiba, so she'll never be trained for that. Shibas do what they want.
Okay.
Shibas are more like cats than they are like dogs.
Yes. Well, maybe she could come on the show and do a meme coin of some kind and then rug pull it.
A doji thing.
That's what they're built for, these Shibus. So.
Absolutely. Anyway, that's
good.
all the news. That's fit to print. So we will wind up coming back on Monday, and we'll see what you guys have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Greg, and thanks for the update. And I know, long-time listeners will be saddened to hear it. But
she was a good girl.
Yeah,
that's what matters.
We'll celebrate the life, and she'll be missed by the sanitation engineers as well.
Oh, she certainly will.
And maybe local
Alrighty.
bears. Okay. Thanks,
Take
Greg.
care.
You too. All right. We'll continue on from here. Let's see. Oh, by the way, I guess as we were speaking earlier of Lori, what's her name? Chavez de Raymer. I don't have any further news about her and what the hell she's done in in life, but that is interesting. She was mayor, I think, of, what you said, Happy Valley for 8 years, and then a brief interim in between the end. I guess she left office in January of 2019 as mayor. Then there was an interim of I don't know what, but she was running for Congress, got elected in 2022, then served the one term, and then poof, Secretary of Labor. I wasn't really, I don't know. I guess I can't explain that. Why Secretary of Labor? I don't know. She just agreed to do it, and that's it. I guess probably also not being able to hold on to your seat would do the trick. All right. Let's see. Anyway, no other experience beyond that. I guess that's what was striking to me. No more electoral experience. So maybe never learned anywhere along the line that you shouldn't be going to strip clubs and drinking on the job. I don't know. Very weird in general. Okay. But speaking of that kind of Republican politician, I suppose I could use this time to update you on news about Matt Gaetz has happened again. He hasn't done anything new, but he's gotten himself back in the news. Florida Bulldog, which I guess, a local watchdog political publication. I don't believe I've ever run into it before, but I may be mistaken about that. But Noreen Marcus is the writer of this piece for Florida Bulldog. Florida bar lets Matt Gaetz off the hook. Not a strip bar like the one Lori Chavez or DeRaymer was going to, but the bar association. Remember, Matt Gaetz, not only allegedly an attorney, but Donald Trump's first choice for Attorney General of the United States of America. Pam Bondi, believe it or not, a second choice. But Matt Gaetz, right in the middle. Imagine, by the way, how much worse this whole Epstein Files thing would have been if it was Matt Gaetz responsible for covering up. I mean, it's basically the same. But anyway, Florida bar lets Matt Gaetz off the hook by agreeing statutory rape has nothing to do with practicing law. And in a sense, I see where they're going with this one. If you're statutorily raping somebody, you're not practicing law. That's a totally different thing. You're breaking the law. How could it have anything to do with practicing the law? I mean, that's basically the reasoning that they're going with here. They really, predetermined outcome. The Florida Bar Association was not going to punish Matt Gaetz. And here's how they decided to explain why they weren't. The Florida Bar downplayed a congressional finding. That's the other entree into the news this week for Matt Gaetz. A congressional finding that Matt Gaetz, President Trump's first choice for U.S. Attorney General, committed statutory rape before the Congress, that is, the United States abandoned his prosecution. Remember when, back in the olden days, and I believe it was the Joe Biden Department of Justice, over which, he kept himself at arm's length, was the one who decided, we're not going to prosecute that. And you know what? That was a very unpopular decision. Within the space of 2 months last year, a bar grievance committee took preliminary steps toward investigating Gaetz, then used an unorthodox excuse to avoid following through, his bar file shows. And I believe, by the way, the other piece of news from the Bulldog here, the Florida Bulldog, I saw this one circulating on Blue Sky and didn't tuck this part away, but the Florida Bar Association's entire report, I guess, got into their hands, and they have published the thing, made it available online. We're just taking the digested bits here in this piece. But within the space of 2 months last year, Bar Grievance Committee took these preliminary steps towards an investigation of Gaetz, and then the unorthodox excuse. What was it? The file, which under bar rules will disappear from public view within months. It goes under seal after, I guess, having been released in the public. But you know how it is. People can keep copies. But anyway, That was released last week at Florida Bulldog's request, so I guess that's how they got a hold of it. I mean, they made it sound like there was, on Blue Sky, it made it sound like they had, through some connection or perhaps subterfuge or a leak had gotten a hold of it. But I guess they said, can we have it? And they said, yeah, but not next month. Anyway, it's an embarrassment to the legal profession, and I think the Florida bar should be embarrassed because for the system to be respected, it has to be applied even-handedly, said Lisa Lerman, professor of law emerita at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. All right. Lerman agreed to review the Gaetz bar file for Florida Bulldog. I'm not aware of what the connection is there and why they went to Catholic University in D.C. to get it. D.C., he was a congressman and all, but I don't know. They must just know one another. Perhaps she's originally from Florida. Roughly the top half of the 70-page file is a report by a bipartisan U.S. House Ethics Committee that concludes the now former Republican congressman took illegal drugs and paid women, at least one of whom was underage, for sex for more than 3 years, which is basically the majority of the time he spent in Congress, I think. He wasn't there that long, thank God. The report recaps the committee's investigation that derailed Gaetz's wild ride that led him off short of becoming U.S. Attorney General. Thank God for that. The committee report cites substantial evidence, that's quote-unquote substantial evidence, that Gaetz committed statutory rape under Florida law. Oh, Florida law. You can't get pardoned for that by Trump. However, the governor may do it. But all under Florida law by having sex with a 17-year-old girl. That'll do it. That's more or less the definition. Noted here as Victim A in the report. In July of 2017, when he was 35, that's another of the prerequisites there, I guess, Representative Gaetz denied the allegation but refused to testify under oath because of how innocent he was, of course. He has publicly stated that Victim A, quote, doesn't exist, the report says. Well, that's a unique approach to things. All right, well, we will save the balance of this report about the report for segment 3, which comes your way in just 1 minute after this top of the hour break. All right, welcome back, everybody. Just a little bit late in getting back to the keyboard, but as a reminder, we are reading through the Florida Bulldogs report on the report from the Bar Association, which quotes the report from the House Ethics Committee that, well, you know what, Matt Gaetz committed statutory rape. And, by the way, using some illegal drugs along the way. Sometimes they do go hand in hand. Anyway, he says, I deny the whole thing. I won't testify under oath. The victim doesn't exist. Let's see where we go from here. Still, a Florida Bar Grievance Committee tasked, believe it or not, with examining Gaetz's actions apparently took a quick look and found no reason to confront the former congressman from Niceville. That's an interesting place to be from, in the Panhandle, or anywhere else for that matter. I'm not going to confront him in the Panhandle. I will not confront him here nor there. I will not confront him anywhere. They conclude in all of this. Why? Because they were never serious about any of this crap. So, the committee's May 12th decision to close the Gaetz case without actually opening it, quote, was not based on a determination that the House report's findings were not accurate. Grievance Committee Chair Casey Pless Waterhouse wrote to Gaetz on August 15th. Waterhouse is a family lawyer in Fort Walton Beach, a city in Gaetz's Panhandle area congressional district, by the way. If that may not be wise to have somebody who has to live under his jurisdiction should he have been in Congress or be involved in politics in that area. But I don't know. At any rate, what she's saying is we're not going to close the case because we think the House Ethics Committee was wrong or inaccurate. We're going to close it for a completely different reason, which is just as bad or worse. And yet, it says, we continue, the committee chose to focus on a comment that clarifies a rule about lawyer misconduct. The comment, quote, draws a distinction between offenses of personal morality or alleged crimes which do not have a connection to the fitness for the practice of law or otherwise indicate characteristics relevant to law practice, Waterhouse wrote. And quite honestly, that is insane on its face. Personal morality or alleged crimes which have no connection to fitness for the practice of law. What does that even mean if it doesn't include statutory rape? Like, are you morally fit for the practice of law? Basically what they're saying is, well, if you're going to be a shyster, no. If you're going to be a grifter, no, it doesn't get in the way of your ability to do that. What about your ability to do it as an upstanding citizen? Well, I thought you said this was a standard of conduct for lawyers. Like, it's not good. The whole thing is a big lawyer joke. And quite honestly, people should be resigning from the Florida bar as a result, except that there's nowhere else for you to go as a professional association. It's really ridiculous. In other words, the committee decided that an allegation of statutory rape wasn't reason enough for the bar to take on Gaetz, because statutory rape has nothing to do with being a lawyer. Why, everyone knows that if you are a lawyer, you should not be doing statutory rape. So it can't be the case that this guy who did the statutory rape either was a lawyer, and so that would have been an interesting vote. We can't discipline him. He's not a lawyer. Why not? Because lawyers don't do statutory rape. Or you could say, well, sometimes lawyers do statutory rape, but that doesn't mean they don't know how to practice law. What's the problem? Why should we discipline him? We're about disciplining people who do a bad job practicing law. He was doing a bad job not raping underage girls. That's different. That's really what they're doing here. That's honest to God the conclusion that they've reached. So, again, from the Florida Bulldog, in other words, the committee decided an allegation of statutory rape wasn't reason enough for the bar to take on Gaetz because statutory rape has nothing to do with being a lawyer. This defense had been pitched by Gaetz's lawyer, Warren Lindsay, according to the bar file. So if you want to know where that novel legal theory came from, the guy's name is Warren Lindsay. And I guess he may just be being a zealous advocate, but you might want to search his computer. I'm just saying. And by the way, now you can do it with an I-205 form, because I don't know where Warren Lindsay was born, but you should smash his door in to find out. And while you're there, look on his computer and see if his odd inspiration separating, a quantum theory here, separating it's physically impossible for there to be crossover between behavior like statutory rape and the practice of law has any grounding in his own conduct. Guess what? The next section of the article is entitled Ethics Experts Discredit Defense. That is to say, Warren Lindsay's defense of Matt Gaetz. New York University law professor Stephen Gillers, an expert on legal ethics, told Florida Bulldog that he's never seen a disciplinary opinion about statutory rape. Like normally, how shall we interpret statutory rape? Good thing, bad thing, neutral thing. I've never seen one making a determination on that because everybody knows it's a bad thing. So no one has ever addressed it this way or any other way before. Do the statutory rape, you're in trouble. I've certainly never seen one that says, do the statutory rape, what are you going to do? That's not what lawyering is. Nonetheless, if proved, that conduct could and would justify some sanction, depending on the facts, he wrote in response to emailed questions. Asked whether this doesn't relate to the practice of law usually works as a defense, Gillis responded, no, because that's the answer. But I mean, basically, you see how insane this defense is? And yet the Florida bar said, well, what are you going to do? It's a theory. We have to credit it. Lawyers are often sanctioned for conduct having nothing to do with the practice of law, e.g., failure to pay child support. Right, it happens. Hit and run. Yeah. Felony-level drug possession. Convictions of tax crimes or drunk driving. Violence against partners or spouses. Dishonesty in business, etc., he wrote. And by the way, I would venture to say, I'm not an expert in this, I would venture to say that, yes, lawyers are, in fact, frequently sanctioned for statutory rape when it's found to be the case. I mean, I hope it's not that frequent in general among anybody, lawyers or otherwise, but when they find it to be the case, if you find yourself holding a bar admission somewhere, Florida or otherwise, and convicted of statutory rape, you will probably face disciplinary action by the bar. Unless, of course, you're Matt Gaetz, who wasn't, to be fair, wasn't in fact convicted of this. They could have gone that direction and said, well, if you're not convicted, we're not under any obligation to do anything about it. You could have used that as an excuse. That probably would have flown a little better. Anyway, D.C. law professor Lerman, who commented earlier, has studied legal ethics for 40 years, and that's a while, said misconduct doesn't have to be established in court to be actionable. That's also true and a very good point. Though you might have pointed to that one and said, look, I mean, there were allegations and there just needed to be more proof before we were going to disbar somebody. Everybody would have said, come on, we all know that he's doing this. I mean, even the House Ethics Committee was willing to say that he did it. Yes, but you could have at least said, we are lawyers and we're a little bit hung up on the importance of a finding of guilt in court. And people, I guess, would have understood that. But she does make the good point. That's not necessary in order for it to be actionable for bar punishment. Right? Ethics regulators have imposed discipline for allegations of criminality that have not been charged or adjudicated, she said. And that's true. Both ethics regulators in Congress and ethics regulators on the Bar Association. And it's usually under the reasoning that this brings discredit on our organization, whether it's the House of Representatives or the state bar. We don't want it to be known that the Florida bar harbors these kinds of individuals. It's best for us all professionally if we kick them out. But I guess it isn't now for some strange reason. Lerman said lawyers, especially those in government service, should be held to a high standard. The lawyer disciplinary authorities expect members of the bar to be law-abiding citizens. So transgressions can lead to discipline even if the alleged conduct has not led to criminal charges or convictions, she said. And when it involves statutory rape, it probably should. One would never know all of that, though, from the Bar Grievance Committee's August 15th letter of advice, as they style it, to Gaetz, which reads like the gentle guidance of an indulgent parent. Which, of course, it may be, because he's sort of lived that way his whole life and has, in fact, a very indulgent parent who is powerful in Florida politics and gave him his start, and I guess continues to cover for him. The letter assures him that the letter itself does not constitute a disciplinary record against you for any purpose. So just the fact that this letter exists doesn't mean you have a disciplinary file. People can't even say, we wouldn't even support people saying that about you. While appealing to his better angels, which is fruitless, it seems. And there, now, he says the victim doesn't exist. I say his better angels don't exist. You are urged in the strongest terms, this is a hell of a letter, huh? Well, to reflect on your responsibilities as an officer of the court. The committee hopes, as a result of this letter, that you are reminded of the required ethical obligations that you make a renewed commitment to the core principles in the oath of attorney and creed of professionalism, the letter says. Right. So everyone knows, like, for instance, don't bill clients for time spent committing statutory rape. That will get you in trouble. But the rest of it doesn't have anything to do with being a lawyer. Never forget that a lawyer is a lawyer is a lawyer. They're quoting something here, which is amazing, given that how much they think doesn't have to do with being a lawyer. A lawyer is a lawyer is a lawyer, except if he's raping people on his own time, and then he's just, look, if you want to be a cad or rapist, let's say, on your own time, that's your business. But if you bill for it, you will be in trouble. So never forget that a lawyer is a lawyer is a lawyer. And you do not take that hat off regardless of what other roles you may fulfill, which is directly contradictory to the conclusion they're reaching, of course. That is in the letter signed by Committee Chair Waterhouse. So you might perhaps harbor some resentment of Ms. Waterhouse herself as well, not just his defense attorney. She did not respond to Florida Bulldog's emailed questions, because how could she? Or anybody's questions for that matter. The Supreme Court of Florida created the Florida Bar as its investigating arm to enforce the standards of ethical conduct for lawyers. If discipline is found to be warranted, it can range from admonishment, they couldn't even bring themselves to do that, to suspension from the practice of law, to disbarment. Matt Gaetz has 0 convictions, it says next, and I don't know whether that is his attorney saying you should be lenient with him because he's never been convicted of anything, or that is everybody else in the world saying Matt Gaetz has no convictions or principles whatsoever. Let's find out which. Now Gaetz works as an anchor for the Trump and MAGA boosting One America News Network. He and his bar defense lawyer, Lindsay of Winter Park, did not respond to a Florida Bulldog request for comment. Gaetz hasn't been convicted, maybe that's what they mean, or charged with any crime. The U.S. Department of Justice investigated him for sex trafficking, along with his associate Joel Greenberg, a former Seminole County tax collector. Eventually, Greenberg pleaded guilty to sex trafficking, and the DOJ ended its Gaetz probe. That seemed like a weird thing to do, but they did do it. The House Ethics Committee's inquiries didn't result in charges either. But commentators agree it cost Gaetz the Attorney General post because of the breadth and specificity of the committee's work and report. Notably, the report contains precise details about the encounter between Gaetz and victim A, the unidentified 17-year-old girl at the center of the statutory rape claim, at a party in a private home in Heathrow near Orlando on July 15, 2017, 6 months after his election to Congress. Gaetz resigned from Congress in 2024, shortly after Trump said he planned to nominate him to be U.S. Attorney General. Again, U.S. Attorney General. Did you hear me? U.S. Attorney General. The committee wrote that evidence showed Gaetz had sex at the party with multiple women, including the 17-year-old girl, and he paid all of them. So he's no Trump, who usually tries to get away without paying and maybe sometimes is forced later on to reach an agreement. The teenager testified she took ecstasy and Gaetz used cocaine. So fun. Matt Gaetz categorically denied that he paid women for sex or used illegal drugs. He refused to discuss victim A with the committee, but questioned her existence in forums where he couldn't perjure himself, that is to say, gave no sworn testimony about that. In public statements, Gaetz continually disparaged the investigation and accused committee members of playing politics. You ask, in part, whether I've had sex with a list of adult women over the past 7 years. The lawful, consensual sexual activities of adults are not the business of Congress, Gaetz told the committee. And I guess they said, well, we differ a little bit about that one. Okay, Gaetz is A-OK in Florida, I guess as a result of all this. Compared to the battle royal with the House committee, Gaetz's dealings with the Florida bar were a walk in the Everglades. Is that good or bad? I would suspect that a walk in the Everglades is actually quite difficult, but okay. Poetic license. The Florida Supreme Court has adopted rules that shield government officials from bar scrutiny as long as they hold office. Did you know that? So state ethics regulators couldn't touch Gaetz until he resigned from Congress and lost his chance to become the nation's chief law enforcement officer. That's handicapping yourselves, by the way, guys. And I guess you're the only ones in Florida who couldn't touch Gaetz, which seems weird. if you ask me, for a bunch of officers of the court to not be able to, enforce the law. Then popular demand back home ignited the Gaetz disciplinary process. The Florida bar received numerous inquiries and expressions of concern about Matt Gaetz as a legislator and by extension as an attorney. The August 15th grievance committee letter says, Gaetz's bar file contains no evidence that the committee investigated him. Basically, they parsed the law around around the case which was launched by someone else, and the investigation of the House Ethics Committee, but they didn't do any investigating of their own. Aaron White, the attorney Aaron White of Santa Rosa Beach, was tapped as, quote, investigating member for this case, but the file suggests he did nothing beyond agreeing to meet with Gaetz's new lawyer, Lindsay. So, he didn't interview any victims or witnesses or anybody from the House Ethics Committee or anything. That's some thorough work. That was in late March. Yet by May 12th, mere weeks after White and Lindsay discussed meeting, committee members had decided they knew enough about Gaetz to remove him, not from the bar, but from their agenda. Florida Bulldog tried to find out what happened, but White and others in a position to know didn't respond to requests for information. Maybe somebody else has to do the asking. Former Florida Bar President Hank Cox, C-O-X-E, in case you were wondering, there's an E on the end, a Jacksonville lawyer who early on arranged with the bar for Matt Gaetz to have more time to find a lawyer, told Florida Bulldog, no comment. Although, I guess you can say this. Hank Cox, at least, it sounds like maybe he was approached to be Gaetz's lawyer, and he said, no way, but I can help you to get more time to find someone else to do it. And then he did. The written record of Gaetz's brief brush with the Florida bar, considering it came to a nothing burger from their end, will nonetheless disappear from the public domain later this year. After a case is closed without producing charges, the bar preserves the case file for 1 year, then destroys it. When an investigation results in charges, the bar opens the case file to the public and it's retained. If Gaetz were to resume practicing law in Florida, potential clients could be directed to his public-facing Florida bar listing that says that Matthew Lewis Gaetz II is an attorney in good standing with a clean 10-year disciplinary history. But if you're 17, watch out, I guess. So, that's really something, wouldn't you say? All right, well, talk about these MAGA types just continue. I guess if you're wondering about this, I saw lots of discussion in social media today about, I guess in addition to stories like the one Greg brought us about the guy from Massachusetts who was like, yeah, he could spit in my face and I'd say thank you. And people saying, what can I tell you, man? It's a cult. Like, I've heard people say that before. But in case you were wondering, what makes people believe in and join the cult? And I guess the answer is stuff like this. Lord, by which I mean Donald Trump, I've seen what you've done for others, like Matt Gaetz, and I want you to do that for me. Why can't I also get away with anything? Do what I want to do, break all the laws, violate the Constitution, statutorily rape people, take drugs, serve in Congress at the same time, whatever, and get away with it. And maybe almost just come this close to not only getting away with it, but becoming Attorney General so that I can help you cover up the Epstein files. Like, why can't you do that for me? And I guess the answer is join the cult. And if you join it and you work hard enough at it and get yourself noticed, you too can get away with anything. I'll pardon you for anything. Even if I can't pardon you, I'll try to pardon you, like Tina Peters. And I guess that explains, it doesn't make me feel like I want to join the cult, but it does make me feel like, not his cult. Why can't I have a cult that will allow me to do any of these things? I would join that cult. I guess I would try not to. But you could see where the temptation comes from. And, of course, that crosses and dovetails nicely with the long-standing credo, I guess, underlying most of this show for the last couple of years, that Trump world is a sex cult. Right. And it's not just because it will provide you with sex, but it will also provide you with a cover-up for that sex. Matt Gaetz' sex life, which is extremely important to him apparently, revolved around his belief in his own impunity. And it made sense for him to throw his lot in with the cult that makes one of the premises of its practice: we will imbue you with that very same kind of impunity, for, in particular, the kind that covers up your sexual improprieties. So, of course, Matt Gaetz is going to be a member. It probably came as a big surprise to him that it couldn't force him through the process in the Senate and into the Attorney General's seat. But perhaps it came as a relief to him that it was another Florida person who ended up taking that seat instead, and he probably figured he'll be well protected on that front. So, okay. By the way, great choice not to prosecute him. I don't know what was behind it. I don't know whether Marcy Wheeler would defend Merrick Garland's decision to drop that prosecution. It may have been that they couldn't, in an atmosphere like this, couldn't produce the evidence they needed to get a conviction, given that Florida and Florida law enforcement and the Florida bar and Florida courts apparently all completely off the deep end on this stuff and in cahoots with rapists Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz. And there was just nothing that could be done, and he knew it. That would be an unfortunate situation. But anyway, I think that was rather informative. And I guess I didn't see yet more abandonment of principle coming, because I just thought we were done with Matt Gaetz. But I guess not. All right. Maybe today is a good day then to dive into Radley Balco's guest essay for the New York Times, which I mentioned yesterday and thought we might get to today. Maybe you could even consider it to be tangentially related. There's definitely an overarching theme of impunity for people who are, whether electorally or otherwise, endowed with the ability to cloak themselves in the law and to, by virtue of serving in office, equate themselves with the law. I am the law while I am serving, and by the way, we can also use it to cloak you afterwards if you've been sufficiently loyal to us during your time in office. All right. Slightly different approach to law enforcement coverage here. Balco's piece is entitled, "I've covered police abuse for 20 years. What ICE is doing is different." And before I forget about this, I guess since we're going to probably do the main reading of this thing in the next segment after the next break, we can preface it now by noting that there are very many among the strategists, elected officials who face midterm elections coming up, who are, and pundit types and activists and writers making this point about taking on ICE and Border Patrol and everybody who's pitching in the effort, essentially the effort against everybody, but focusing on immigrants of all kinds, legal, U.S. residents, green card holders, U.S. citizens at this point who are no longer, well, I mean, they may have been immigrants, but they've now achieved citizenship status. Doesn't matter to what we, under the blanket of ICE, what we refer to as ICE, and sometimes mean several other agencies joining in cahoots with them, and we should note that. But people saying, all right, well, we're going to take this on, or even, dare I say it, defund ICE. Now, what that might mean to you is open to debate. There are a lot of people approaching it from different directions or reaching different conclusions, but everybody is saying at a minimum, major restructuring must be necessary based on what we've been watching them do. Okay. So the fear, though, is what? The political fear is, well, you'll be viewed as being anti-law enforcement. And probably also, weak on immigration or weak on the border, whatever that might actually mean. But as far as the accusation that you're anti-law enforcement is concerned, I'm seeing this more and more. People coming to the conclusion, don't let that worry you. In fact, being anti-ICE is not and ought not to be considered being anti-law enforcement, because what these people are doing cannot be, by any definition, law enforcement. Take a good look at what they're doing, and I think you'll reach the same conclusion. Hi, it's me, David. I mostly do the commercials around here, too. Have you ever thought you'd like to do a show like this one, but a lot shorter? Maybe without necessarily waking up early each day, or even, let's say, working at it each day? Well, now you can, sort of, and by now, I mean pretty much any time you want, because what I'm talking about is you recording a news story, sharing an essay, or otherwise contributing your thoughts on these crazy times with the rest of us, and with any digital recording device. Make the show your own, as I like to say. Send me a digital file of your recording, a link to any source material, and a note about how you'd like to be identified on the air at KagroX, that's KAGROX, at gmail.com, and I'll take it from there. Don't worry about those ums and ahs either. I sure don't, but I'll even do my best to edit your submission down into a nice-sounding dispatch from the field. So come on, everybody, make the show your own. Help me prove once and for all that I'm not just imagining this audience. Okay, everybody, just another brief fight with the mute button here in order to get myself back on the air. But thank you for waiting through it. We want to pick up where we left off on the other side of the break. Well, facing, at least, the reading of Radley Belko's essay, I've covered police abuse for 20 years. What ICE is doing is different. But again, I wanted to preface, but definitely preface the reading by setting this up. One, there are lots of people, of course, willing now to voice the message of defund ICE or something along those lines. And we know why. And we know why there's shyness about that, because, of course, when the target was the local constabulary, wherever it may have been, the idea of defunding the police, for instance, basically being, well, gee whiz, that's a powder keg. Let's not say that. It's a bad idea politically. We understood why that was the case, although, by the way, I am also seeing pushback about that. When was the defund the police message at its peak? It was at its peak post George Floyd murder. And that being the case, well, one, you can stick a pin in it and figure out what year it was, 2020. How did the 2020 elections go? Pretty good. Now, I guess the theory is supposed to be, well, they would have gone even better if you hadn't said defund the police, but you did. And it scared politicians, anyway, to hear that said. And I understand why. The conventional wisdom was and still is that that's dangerous politically. It's still the case that law enforcement organizations and their political influence, their ability to be heard either through endorsement or protest or whispers to the local news outlets that they disfavor one politician or another, can have a political impact. But it is worth noting, I think you have a good point here. Like, okay, well, defund ICE or defund the police was such a damaging message, and yet you won the presidential election. You won you made gains in congressional elections. It wasn't really such a damaging thing after all, perhaps. there's at least an argument to be made there. But okay, whatever. It does tend to erupt in internal fights, which get exposed and the flames of which are fanned in the newspapers. Maybe you want to try to avoid that. Okay, fine. And yet, we find ourselves right back here again with the defund argument, only this time the focus is ICE. But you can differentiate in a number of ways. Right up on its face, for instance, you can just say, look, ICE is not a law enforcement organization. That's not what it was built for. They've tried to turn it into something else, but they've missed the mark in terms of law enforcement. They are breaking the law far more often than they're enforcing it, and they were never supposed to be enforcing it in the first place anyway. And it also ICE stands in for a conglomerate of a lot of supposed, purportedly federal agencies, staffed by people who purport to be federal officers, but in many cases just ought not to be considered as much. And by the way, I think in the future, if they're ever held to account, you will find that these agencies say, these people aren't ours. You can't hold us to account for their behavior. We never trained these people. We never onboarded these people correctly. But that's our complaint right now. And they'll use it as a defense later on, you can be sure. But as I was saying, I think what Radley Balco's article probably will highlight a lot of is you're seeing increasingly video of abuses committed by ICE, but in pursuit of something that isn't even really a law enforcement function, supposedly immigration enforcement. And that's really, again, not criminal law enforcement. It's not, it's still the case that it's not a crime to be in the country as an undocumented immigrant. It's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony, is what I mean. It's enshrined in criminal law, true, and they love to use the phrase illegal immigrant, and there's certainly a legal process that can be used to expel you from the country, but it's not a violent crime. It's not a felony. It's a misdemeanor, and yet they react to it with police using tactics and equipment that wouldn't even be warranted for much in the way of domestic crime, even violent crimes, making the arrests. You want to take certain precautions, but riot gear, tanks, flashbang grenades, not the usual tool of what until recently we recognized as law enforcement. In addition to which, they're breaking the law very frequently. Like I said, we see videos of people being placed under arrest for protest activity, in some cases, who are immobilized, incapacitated on the ground, handcuffed, and yet we have people casually walking up to them while they're pinned face down and emptying a can of bear spray in their face. And what kind of law enforcement operation is that? There's nothing happening. The person poses no threat. That's the point of pointing out that they're face down, immobilized, with 3 officers on them and being handcuffed. They pose no threat whatsoever to anyone, and yet they get a face full of chemical weapons purely because the cops are angry that they made them work hard and get breathless wrestling them, or sometimes not even that. They don't even put up much of a fight. You just, you didn't respect my authority, and surrender and handcuff yourself. So I'm going to spray this poison in your eyes and burn out your eyeballs because I'm mad at you. That's not law enforcement. And you shouldn't accept the premise that it is. And when you say defund, whether it's defund, eliminate, or restructure, or let's provide better training for ICE officers, whatever position it is you're taking, you're not attacking law enforcement if you're attacking these kinds of practices, because law enforcement shouldn't be doing this and can't be doing this and also be law enforcement. Though we have, over the 20 years that Radley Balco's been covering things, gradually come to accept more and more abuse from law enforcement as routine. Well, who can blame them? It's a very dangerous job, even though COVID was killing more of them than any suspects ever were. And they're risking their lives for us, and they just want to be, the poor police, they just want to be able to know that they're going to get back home to their families and the safety of their homes each day, which is why it's okay for them to put pepper spray in people's eyeballs once they've arrested them. It is not. It does not follow. It never can. And to the extent that I'm supposed to stand up and salute you for your bravery, I can't do it if you're doing this. And I can't do it if you're not the one doing this but won't stand up against the ones who are either. And I'm not going to give you a discount on your Chevrolet. Sorry. Anyway, so I was saying that the preface for all this is if saying defund, restructure, eliminate, abolish ICE is not actually fairly regarded as an anti-law enforcement message, that, of course, will not matter to Republicans. And, by the way, it also won't matter to a certain kind of Democratic consultant who is usually very quick, consultant, pundit, online rando, whatever. They're usually very quick to accuse you and what you're doing of being something that will help Republicans. But it's never the case that their acceptance of the framing that whatever Democrats do, no matter how they do it, it's always wrong in the eyes of law enforcement. And the daddy party Republicans are the one who are going to permanently have the support of law enforcement. And there's nothing you can do about it. That may actually be the case, but in that case, there's nothing about what you're doing that's helping Republicans. You shouldn't worry about that. Others point out quite correctly, no matter what you do, even if you adopt the position that's prescribed for you by these pundits, consultants, or otherwise online randos, Republicans will say that you, as a Democratic candidate, are anti-law enforcement, are anti-ICE, are pro-open borders. They will say that about you regardless. You might take that as an invitation to do what you like and do what feels right in this, because no matter what you do, you'll be painted inaccurately as anti-law enforcement. And so you ought to take it as license. Take the position that you actually think is morally correct. But I want to also point out, in case you're worried about what that does to your electoral prospects or how you should continue the fight from there, if you're going to be unfairly accused, but try not to be confused, but you will be accused. You're being painted into a corner, right? On the one hand, no matter what you say, they're going to say you're anti-law enforcement. And some Democrats will help them do that while accusing you of helping Republicans. So you're being painted into a corner here. There's no position you can take that will be even universally supported among your own party. So what about, though, the concept of, maybe it's just custom and belief and there's nothing behind it, but what about that concept of the most dangerous animal being a cornered animal? That once they realize there's nowhere for them to escape to, that they're trapped in this corner, that no matter what decision they make, they're going to have to fight. They will fight more viciously than ever before. More viciously you've never seen, the likes of which you've never seen. Right? Now you're a cornered animal. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, you will be painted as anti-law enforcement. You might as well start by rejecting the premise. No, I'm not. Well, you said abolish ICE. That's right. And that is not anti-law enforcement, because people who pepper spray people in the face who've been immobilized, people who capture 5-year-old kids and use them as bait to draw out the parents so that they can arrest them and empty a can of bear spray in their faces, that's not law enforcement. You shouldn't stand for being accused of being anti-law enforcement. I am pro-law enforcement, pro-enforcing the law that says you can't pepper spray immobilized people in the eyes. Pro-enforcing the law that says you can't capture kids and traffic them across state lines to try to draw out anybody. You can't lure people with children. That's gross. And it's Epstein file stuff and Matt Gaetz stuff. And the fact that somehow you're able to stand there and say you're pro-law enforcement and I'm anti? No, we won't stand for that. Okay, great idea. Will anybody do it? I don't know. To the extent that it helps you come to the conclusion that it's absolutely necessary to do this, if ICE hasn't convinced you, well, what if Radley Balco were able to convince you? Because he's covered police abuse for 20 years, and what ICE is doing is different. And by the way, he would have said you were pro-law enforcement to oppose law enforcement officers' abuses even prior to what ICE is doing. But ICE should make it obvious. Let's read. Police agencies in the United States kill more than 1,000 people each year. And remember, we're supposed to be against stuff that kills more than 1,000 people each year. We're going to have a drug czar in this country because more than 1,000 people die from overdoses each year. We're going to make a war on that one, but not this one. Anyway, after many of those deaths, the agencies involved put out statements. Those statements often use what's known as the exonerative voice to minimize officers' involvement. The first statement from the Minneapolis Police Department after George Floyd's death, for example, said that the officers at the scene, quote, noted that he appeared to be suffering from medical distress. Yeah, it's quite the understatement. These communications often cast events in a light most favorable to the officers involved, sometimes to the point of deception. Too often, they'll try to smear the deceased by citing a criminal record or suggesting a drug addiction or gang affiliation. Very clear. We see that all the time. I, Radley Balco, have been covering policing for more than 20 years and have read and parsed a lot of these statements. The Department of Homeland Security's response after the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent Jonathan Ross shot and killed Renee Good in Minneapolis this month is something else entirely. For all their flaws, typical communications from police officials usually include a modicum of solemnity. There are assurances that there will be a fair and impartial investigation, even if those investigations too often turn out to be neither. There's at least the acknowledgement that to take a human life is a profound and serious thing. The Trump administration's response to Ms. Good's death made no such concessions. So it's that much easier to not regard it as law enforcement, if you ask me. No. These are the things that law enforcement does after killing somebody. They're not even doing that. It must be something different. There were no promises of an impartial investigation. There was no regret or remorse. There was little empathy for her family, for her parents, her partner, or the children she left behind. From the moment the world learned about her death, the administration pronounced the shooting not only justified, but an act of heroism worthy of praise and celebration. It isn't just the lying, it's that the lies are wildly exaggerated and easily refutable. All the evidence we've seen so far, including a meticulous New York Times forensic analysis of the available footage, makes clear that at worst, Ms. Good mildly obstructed immigration enforcement, disobeyed ambiguous orders, or perhaps attempted to flee an arrest. None of those are capital crimes, nor do law enforcement officers get to dole out punishment in such cases. At one point, President Trump justified her shooting by claiming she'd been, quote, very disrespectful to immigration officers. That isn't a crime at all, much less a capital one. I'll add, the lies that this administration is telling you about Ms. Good aren't those you deploy as part of a cover-up. They're those you use when you want to show that you can get away with anything. With Matt Gaetz, for instance. They're a projection of power. For the past decade or so, since the protests in Ferguson, Missouri, America has engaged in a high-stakes dialogue about police abuse and accountability, the militarization of law enforcement, and the push and pull between public safety and civil liberties. Those discussions, while occasionally heated, have been based on a shared understanding that the primary job of domestic law enforcement is to serve the public. Oh well. What Mr. Trump is doing with federal immigration forces has rendered those debates obsolete. The surge of federal forces into Minneapolis, like smaller, earlier surges into Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, Washington, and Chicago, isn't about law enforcement at all. And yet that's what you'll be accused of being, anti-law enforcement. So, doesn't matter whether you do it or not, you'll still be accused of it. Might as well go for it. Might as well point out, I reject your premise. Now, back to Balco. It's not about law enforcement at all. It is about an administration declaring, explicitly at times, that the purpose of federal law enforcement isn't to uphold the rule of law or promote public safety, but to enforce the will of a single man. We started to see this in the way the Trump administration responded to previous shootings by immigration officers, including of Carlitos Ricardo Parias of Los Angeles and Marimar Martinez in Chicago. Administration officials quickly declared those shootings justified and righteous, with hyperbolic language similar to that used after Ms. Good's killing. Those claims would also later be disproved by witnesses' accounts and other evidence. The government eventually dropped the charges against Ms. Martinez. A judge dismissed Mr. Parias's case, difficult, with prejudice, meaning they can't be brought again. In fact, nearly all of the administration's responses to deaths in custody, shootings, or other accusations of abuses have used maximalist language to venerate immigration officers, dehumanize their victims, and villainize anyone who doesn't support the Trump administration. There are no disinterested parties, no innocent bystanders. People are either criminal immigrants or radical leftists who deserve what happens to them, or they are heroic, patriotic federal cops incapable of mistakes. There is no humanity for the civilians and no humanity for the officers. Oh, as a matter of fact, let me add that that's probably what we could and should be saying, though it's not what Radley Balco said. He actually wrote, there is no humanity for the civilians and no humility for the officers. Although, honestly, I think it's fair game to say also no humanity for them, because humility normally is, in fact, a human condition. Trump doesn't have it, but that's because he's inhuman. But yes, it also dehumanizes the officers by making them these weird, infallible gods, which, I'm sure they enjoy the status, but isn't something, people typically enjoy. And certainly not something people typically enjoy seeing other people get, but not them. But humility would be an important part of that, yes. Last week, Radley Balco continues, after federal agents dragged Aliyah Rahman, a U.S. citizen, from her car and arrested her. This is the woman who was on her way to the doctor's appointment and making a turn onto a street that, supposedly federal law enforcement officers didn't like. I don't like that you're driving here. We don't want anyone driving here for reasons. So they dragged her from her car and arrested her. After that happened, a Department of Homeland Security spokesperson referred to her as an agitator who was obstructing immigration operations. She was trying to get to a doctor's appointment at the Traumatic Brain Injury Center when immigration officers used pepper spray and possibly flash grenades on a vehicle with a family inside, sending 3 children to the hospital. Unlike, by the way, Jonathan Ross, who they claimed went to the hospital, and he is suffering internal bleeding, and it's amazing that he's even alive. He didn't even go to the hospital. He didn't. But these kids did. But who cares? Because it's civilians. F them. Anyway, when immigration officers used pepper spray and possibly flash grenades on a vehicle with a family inside, sending 3 children to the hospital, the department posted to social media, quote, "It is horrific to see radical agitators bring children to violent riots. Now all caps, please stop endangering your children." The family was headed home from a child's basketball game. Yeah, that was the reality, but this is what they said about it. Stop endangering your children, which of course, by the way, was the line in the first Trump administration's family separation policy. If you're bringing your children to the United States, stop doing it. You're endangering them. You know what will happen if you bring them here. In addition to such language, the administration has embraced fear tactics long associated with totalitarian regimes. which means that, again, by definition, in America, that's not law enforcement. Because the law is we don't have a totalitarian regime, and we're going to do what we can, and you're entitled to do what you can to resist that. Oh, we have a Second Amendment for it. Yeah. Right, sure, whatever. Until now, law enforcement officers in the United States rarely masked their faces, save for during specialty operations like SWAT raids. For most agencies, this isn't a written policy. It's just been accepted that masked policing isn't consistent with a democratic society. We want law enforcement officers to see themselves as accountable to the community. And we want community members to see officers as approachable so they'll cooperate. Masks undermine both. They instill fear in the community and encourage a menacing aura of infallibility among officers. Instilling fear is a drawback only if your goal is public safety, which is, of course, the primary responsibility of law enforcement. So that's how you know that being anti-ICE means you're not anti-law enforcement. Because if their goal isn't really public safety, you don't got to worry about them. This administration, that's not what Radley says. What he says is that this administration has made clear that it doesn't want marginalized communities, immigrants, Somali U.S. citizens, residents of Latino neighborhoods, and so on. And note the breadth of the language there. They don't want any of them to feel safe. It wants them living in fear. This is why they mask. It's why they shatter car windows. It's why Stephen Miller, the architect of Mr. Trump's immigration agenda, went on cable news to assure federal immigration officers incorrectly, not unlike the memo Greg was mentioning earlier, that they have complete immunity from criminal or civil liability, and why, after Ms. Good's death, Department of Homeland Security social media accounts reiterated Mr. Miller's claims. They are, I would add, fabricated claims, completely misstate the state of the law, and in fact, completely misstate Americanism as a concept from start to finish. But he did make them, and they do believe them, because typically you've been able to believe the pronouncements of high-ranking government officials, because they usually don't just lie like that, but now they're free to do so. Let me also add, though, that masking, when he says this is why they mask, he wants these communities living in fear, that is to say immigrants, Somali U.S. citizens, residents of Latino neighborhoods, and so on. Another reason they mask, by the way, is because very often some of these officers are recruited from those communities, and they don't want their communities to find out that they're doing this for money. And that's their protection. I'll be recognized in my community if I take the mask off. Although honestly, your voice probably will give you away as well. The administration has resurrected tactics that professional policing groups have deemed dangerous or counterproductive, right? Why isn't it considered being pro-law enforcement to say, I want to hold ICE to the standards promulgated by local and state law enforcement organizations? Why am I not winning the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police in my jurisdiction for saying, the Fraternal Order of Police actually says that you can do X and can't do Y. ICE is doing Y. That means they're not law enforcement, or at least not adhering to the standards of law enforcement. Why is the FOP endorsing my opponent who says Y is not only okay, but good? And the answer is, we discussed it in prefacing the article. You're going to be painted as anti-law enforcement regardless. Why that is, there are many reasons for it, and some of them may have something to do with local and state law enforcement getting comfortable with the impunity that they get from Republicans, whether it's the full-blown Matt Gaetz sex cult treatment or just plain, we're not going to prosecute you if we pick you up for drunk driving. Anyway, let's see what else we can get on record here, because we're damaging Radley Balco's ability to tell his story at this point by annotating it along the way. All right, we're getting close to the end of our ability to read to you, but let's reiterate. The administration has resurrected tactics that professional policing groups have deemed dangerous or counterproductive. ProPublica recently reported on 40 incidents over the past year in which federal immigration officers used potentially fatal chokeholds that are banned by most police agencies. Federal agents have shot into cars at least 10 times since September. This, too, is prohibited by most big city police agencies, in part because it's too easy to mistake a driver's intent. So this is anti-law enforcement organization. To do these things is anti-law enforcement. To support these things is anti-law enforcement. Strangely, they don't view it that way. And it may be that it was just part of the apologetic rhetoric that police organizations engage in after a killing. And they're just saying, we need to mouth these words. We need to have these policies that say this stuff isn't permitted. But not only are we rarely going to discipline our own for actually breaking that, but now we see that the federal government is giving impunity to a certain organization that they claim is a law enforcement organization to do just those things. And they may even, I would suggest, be recruiting from among the group of local and state law enforcement officers frustrated by these limitations and angry that they aren't given impunity to break these regulations whenever they feel it's necessary, and may say, there is a place where we can go and still claim to be law enforcement officers and get more toys and camo, which makes no sense whatsoever, and be excused for all of these violations of law enforcement principles. And that place is ICE, and they may even give us a $50,000 bonus to join it. It'd be awfully difficult to rein in such an organization, but especially that it's populated by people who have joined it because they've abandoned first principles of law enforcement. Well, they shouldn't be entitled to call themselves law enforcement officers.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, as I said, we've reached the end of our time to bring in the news, and it's now time to hand things over to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll have Ian Reifowitz on hand early in the morning to discuss this and other topics of concern to you, the listener. Please do stay tuned, and we'll see you tomorrow.